Several years ago, I stopped reading the Bible. Wait, what? Yes, there are two main reasons for this. Firstly, I discovered that the books of the Bible were never written to be personally read, but to be collectively heard. You see, the Bible you hold in your hands today is a relatively modern phenomenon. The printed Bible has only been available since the 15th century, shortly after Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press. Not only that, even if you could obtain a hand-copied version of the Bible then, most people were illiterate and would not have been able to read it. So for more than 1,000 years, the only time you could probably have any interaction with any book of the Bible would be when it was read out in a church congregation or gathering of Christians. Followers of Jesus before the production of the printed Bible would not have had the intention nor opportunity to read their Bible every day. The Bible would have been mostly heard and in community. Secondly, the original manuscripts of the books of the Bible did not contain chapters and verses. The current division of the biblical books into chapters was only introduced in the 13th century, while the division into verses only in the 16th century. Biblical scholars have noted that these divisions are often incoherent and at inappropriate points. Today, it is very common for Christians to read the Bible based on chapters and verses. It is also very common to quote the Bible out of its context based on these arbitrary chapter and verse divisions. If someone sent you a love letter, do you open it in the middle and read some random sentences somewhere on the page? No, you would read the entire letter from start to finish and probably several times over. Then why do we read random chapters and verses out of context in God's love letter to us? Based on these two main reasons, I stopped reading the Bible. Instead, I started listening to it. I obtained an audio version of the Bible and set about listening to it whenever I could. Not only this, I aimed to listen to as big chunks as I could. If it was a small book like many of the New Testament letters, I aimed to listen to it from start to finish in one sitting. If it was a bigger book like the Gospels or some of the Old Testament books, my goal was to complete it within a few days. This approach revolutionized my life. Honestly, I was shocked to discover that many favorite verses of mine did not actually mean what I thought they meant. Once I heard whole books in a sitting, I realized that many of the books had a different theme or message to what I was taught in church. Sometimes I got angry. For example, when I listened to the entire book of Romans in one sitting, I realized that Paul was making an incredibly convoluted argument. Many of the ways we pluck verses from Romans misses this. No wonder scholars have been debating for centuries what he really meant. The biggest way listening to the Bible transformed my life was when I decided to reconstruct my understanding of Jesus by going through the Gospels over and over and over again. I listened to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John more than 10 times, and I was shocked to discover things about Jesus that I never saw before and never heard taught in my Christian tradition. This was how I started reconstructing my faith. If you want to reconstruct your faith, I suggest you do the same. No, I'm not saying you should stop reading the Bible. I'm suggesting that you try listening to it as well. Today, you can easily listen to many different translations on the free Bible app. And why don't you try consuming each book of the Bible as an entire book instead of reading random chapters and verses out of context? As you do this, may you experience God anew and deepen your encounter with Him. God bless.